Joshua just did a bunch of battles, right? And he fought all these people, and I think where's that key phrase? It's there at the end. Here we go, 42. And all the kings of Israel and their land did Joshua take at one time, because Yahweh Elohim of Israel fought for Israel. That was in 10. They took it not because of their military prowess and their brilliance of Joshua as a general, but they took it because Yah fought for Israel. And if he be with us, who can stand against us? And I submit, if he's not on your side, you're in trouble. So that's an important point. So let's pick up in 11. Oh, well, no, we'll pick up in 43 of the last chapter of chapter 10. And Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, unto the camp to Gilgal. So it's okay, they won the battles. Let's go back to Gilgal. Now we pick up in 11. And it came to pass, when Jabin, which would probably be what? Yabin? Does somebody have a different word for Jabin? Because there was no J.
Yabin.
Yabin?
With a Y.
Yabin. When Yabin, king of Hazor, had heard of those things that we just read about last week, that he sent to Joab, king of Madon, and to the king of Shimron, and to the king of Akshaph, and to the kings that were on the north of the mountains, and of the plains south of the mountains, Chinneroth, and in the valley, and in the borders of Dor on the west, and to the Canaanite on the east and on the west, and to the Amorite and the Hittite and the Perizzite and the Jebusite in the mountains, and to the Hivite under Hermon in the land of Mizpah. So everybody, right? He's calling all hands. 4. And they went out, they and all their host with them, much people, even as the sand that is upon the seashore in multitude, with horses and chariots, very many. So he calls all these people from all about the land, and they all show up. Not only do they show up, they showed up with what? 2 things. Horses and chariots. The Israelites pretty much don't have these things. Chariots are like tanks, right? So they're bringing their tanks, they're bringing their mounted, they're bringing their Bradleys. Somebody just asked me, they said, hey, they were talking to me directly on a forum, and they said, what are you going to do if the world goes crazy and the army's bad and these bad people show up in a Bradley and they're attacking Shofar Mountain and they're calling in A-10s on your position? That's kind of that, right? They're bringing horses and chariots. And I said, wait a minute. So we get a Bradley and all the stuff in it and the radio that talks to the A-10s? Awesome. See, it's just how you look at it. I look at it like Israel. I've got Yah on my side. We're going to win this battle. I don't care what you bring in front of me. Bring all the horses and multitude that you want. We're on the side of Yah. But this reminds me, let's keep your finger here. Go to Revelation chapter 20, verse 7. Revelation 20, verse 7. Now we know this is future. That was past. There's nothing new under the sun. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan, the adversary, shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the 4 quarters of the earth. Just like this guy called everybody from all around the place. 4 quarters of the earth, that means all around. Gog and Magog, and in this case that means east and west. To gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And that's what they're talking about here in Joshua. That these people were so numerous, these warriors that show up with horses and chariots, that they're like the sand of the sea. We know how that one turns out, because we already read to the end of this book, and we know we win. Same case, we can probably suppose the same case is going to be here. But let's read on and see. So we're back in Joshua, verse 5. And when all these kings were met together at the waters of Mermon to fight against Israel. Now here's the thing. They've all come together. They brought, not only is there a bazillion of them as sand of the sea or sand of the seashore, they brought horses, they brought chariots in great numbers. So Israel in this battle that's coming is greatly outnumbered, and they're greatly outclassed. And I don't mean outclassed like, you hold your pinky up when you take your tea. It's what they're facing. They've got swords and spears and some bows, is what the Israelites have. And these other guys have chariots, and they have tanks and Bradleys and artillery and whatever, and there's a lot of them. So it's a bad thing. Do you think Joshua was afraid? Yeah. Come on. At the end of the day, it's just like I was talking earlier here. I'm a man. Joshua's a man. He's a type of Yeshua, but he's a man. He's not Yeshua. He's afraid. We're going to see why. We're going to prove that here in a second, maybe right now. And Yahweh said, yes, right now, verse 6, and Yahweh said unto Joshua, be not afraid because of them, for tomorrow about this time I will deliver them all up slain before Israel. See, Joshua was afraid. He's like, oh man, there is a lot of these Muldoons out there. And look, they brought chariots. They're going to flank us with their horses. Oh, what are we going to do? He was afraid because when you're in command, when you're in charge, when you're responsible, that also, everything we're talking about today goes back to that talk we had earlier. When you're the leader, a lot of people that are down looking up think, oh, look, he gets to make all the decisions and he gets to do this and he gets to do that. No, leaders feel horribly responsible for the people under them, good leaders. And so he's like, I don't know how we're going to pull this one off. Now, he should know, and it's easy to say, look, the father did this, the father did this, the father did this. Why are you doubting? But he's a man, and he's also a military man by this point, and he sees what's arrayed against him, and he's like, this is going to be tough. And that's why the father tells him, do not be afraid. I'll make you a promise. I'm going to deliver them all up to you killed before Israel. You shall, this is a cool word. My daughter, who's an English teacher, she's a grad student now. She's been trying to bring back these old words in the English language. And she says, we should use these old words. And I think one of them was rapscallion. But this one, I had to look it up, how to pronounce it. I've got ho, H-O-U-G-H. Does anybody have another word? You shall hoe their horses.
Hamstring.
Hamstring, because that's what it means. You shall hamstring their horses. Don't be afraid of the horses. Hamstring them and burn their chariots with fire. So you're sitting there looking at those horses going, oh man, and you're looking at their chariots going, oh man. It's like, nah man, don't worry. I got this for you, Israel, Joshua. You're going to hamstring those horses. You're going to burn their chariots with fire. 7, so Joshua came and all the people of war with him against them by the waters of Merom suddenly, and they fell upon them. They attacked them. What's the key word in that verse? Let me read it again. So Joshua came and all the people of war with him against them by the waters of Merom suddenly, and they fell upon them.
Suddenly.
Suddenly. We can start making a military assessment of Joshua's tactics. Everybody know who Rommel was? Desert tanker guy for the Nazis, the Germans in World War II. And he was just raging and nobody could stop him. He studied Mosby and
Nathan
Bedford Forrest from our Civil War. They were mounted on horses. He's mounted in tanks. He studied their tactics, and that's what he applied. And then Patton eventually starts fighting Rommel, and there's this famous scene in the movie, but it's true. He said, ha ha, I read your book, because Rommel wrote a book based on his experiences. Patton read his book, and he knew what kind of leader Rommel was, so he knew how to fight him. Well, Joshua, do you remember when all of a sudden he decided we're marching all night, let's go? Mm-hmm. Like no preparation, it's just like everybody rook up, let's go, we're going, marches all night, and then attacks, right? And fights all day. Here it says Joshua came with all his army by the waters of Merom suddenly, and they fell upon them there. They weren't ready for him. Despite the fact that they had all these people and all these horses and all this cavalry, they didn't think the Israelites were going to hit them that quick. They weren't ready. Speed, surprise, shock. That's what Joshua's doing here. You guys can take that and put it in the back of your head and hang on to it maybe for later. He came upon them suddenly and he fell upon them. Verse 8. And Yahweh delivered them into the hand of Israel, who smote them and chased them unto great Zidon and unto Misrephothmaim. Wow. and unto the valley of Mizpah eastward, and they smote them until they left them none remaining. They attacked them, and you can tell they're running away because they went from here to there to there to there because they weren't ready, and they killed them all. They killed them until there weren't any more of them left, despite the fact that they had horses and chariots, despite the fact that they had Bradleys and tanks and armored vehicles. And Joshua did unto them as Yahweh bade him, and he hewed their horses, he hamstrung their horses, and he burnt the chariots with fire. So, the Israelite army is swords and spears and some bows and arrows. And then they're confronted with this army who, we take the time to read, has horses and chariots. And Joshua's afraid because of that, because it's the same as, you know, you're out there fighting, the Chinese are coming, and you've got your AR or your AK or whatever, and you're running around, all of a sudden they've got helicopters and tanks and whatever. And you win the battle. Joshua wins the battle. Why doesn't he keep the horses and the chariots?
Because Yahweh told him not to.
Yahweh told him not to, but here's the other thing. Joshua's army knows how to use their swords and their spears and their bows and arrows. They don't know anything about cavalry tactics. They probably don't know a whole lot about riding horses. They weren't riding a whole lot of horses in the desert. They weren't riding any horses as slaves in Israel. And you're a horsewoman. You don't just get on a horse and do horse-mounted tactics, right? So that would be a problem. Same thing with chariots. They don't have chariots. They don't know about armored warfare. They don't know how to do it. They know how to do what they know how to do. And so all these high-speed things would do was slow them down and confuse them and make them not effective. And they may try to fight chariots against chariots, and who do you think is going to win that battle? They're going to win it because they know what chariot fighting is all about. And so, and yes, the father told them not to, but it all goes together why that happened. So they burn them, and they hamstring all the horses. Did they eat them?
No.
No, they didn't, because it's not clean food, right? All right. 10. And Joshua at that time turned back, and he took Hazor, and he smote the king thereof with the sword. Hazor before time was the head of all those kingdoms. So the head city, he fights these guys, he chases them, he kills them all, he destroys all their equipment, and he's like, okay, let's go back and mop up Hazor, because Hazor was the chief city of these kingdoms. And they smote all the souls that were therein with the edge of the sword, utterly destroying them, that there was not any left to breathe. They killed everybody. Every man, woman, and child in there. And you know why, but we're going to get to it again in this reading. And he burnt Hazor with fire. Burned the whole city down. And all the cities of those kings and all the kings with them did Joshua take, and he smote them with the edge of the sword, and he utterly destroyed them, as Moses the servant of Yahweh had commanded. And we went over that in Deuteronomy, where that was 2 times ago. But as for the cities that stood still in their strength, that means they had invaded the city, if you will. Let's say it's got walls and towers and everything, and they come running in the front gate, and they kill everybody in the city. But the city is still a fortress standing there. They don't destroy those. Israel burned none of them except for Hazor. That did Joshua burn. So they kept the cities with the fortifications and stuff, because they're going to occupy this land. It's going to be their city. But as for the cities that stood still in their strength, Israel burned none of them except Hazor. Joshua burned. 14. And all the spoils of those cities and the cattle, the children of Israel took for a prey unto themselves. So they got all the stuff out of the cities for them. But every man they smote with the edge of the sword until they had destroyed them, neither left they any to breathe. I have a little note here. Black flag. Does anybody know what the black flag symbolizes?
No quarter.
No prisoners, no quarter. It's been used throughout history. In this country, it was used in the Civil War by Confederates who were told, if we capture you, we're going to shoot you or hang you. And they're like, oh, then we have nothing to lose. And so they started flying a black flag. They would carry a black flag when they attacked on their horses or whatever. And it basically meant no quarter asked, no quarter given. We're taking no prisoners. We are killing everybody because we know you're going to do it to us, and we're not going to surrender. Because y'all made it that way. Because y'all said, if we surrender, you're going to kill us. So they're like, here we go. This is kind of what Joshua's doing. There's no quarter given. It doesn't matter if these people surrender or not. He's slaying them all by the boatload. And Yahweh commanded, as Moshe commanded Moses his servant, so did Moses command Joshua, and so did Joshua. He left nothing undone of all that Yahweh commanded Moshe. We have to clean this land in order to have it safe and clean for Israel to occupy. It's the promised land. He didn't say, I'm giving you the promised land on a silver platter just ready for you to move in. You've got to take it. And when you take it, you have to clean it. And if you don't clean it, there's problems coming. And so that was what was going on there. 16, so Joshua took all that land, the hills, and all the south country, and all the land of Goshen, and the valley, and the plain, and the mountain of Israel, and the valley of the same. Even from Mount Halak, that goeth up into Seir, even unto Baal Gad, in the valley of Lebanon, under Mount Hermon. And all their kings he took, and he smote them, and he slew them. Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. There was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel except for the Hivites, the inhabitants of Gibeon. We already know about that one. And all other they took in battle. For it was of Yahweh to harden their hearts that they should come against Israel in battle, that he might destroy them utterly, and that they might have no favor, but that he might destroy them as Yahweh commanded Moshe. And so Yah made the kings of those cities' hearts hardened so they would fight Israel. He didn't want them to go, these guys haven't lost a battle yet. They took Ai, they took Jericho, they took Gibeon. Let's just give up, because then it would be harder to kill them if they're all surrendering. So instead they're fighting, and that makes it easier, and that's why Yah did it, because he didn't want any of those people left alive. We're going to find out in this next verse, again, why. And at that time came Joshua, and he cut off the Anakims from the mountains, and from Hebron, and from Debir, and from Anab, and from all the mountains of Judah, and from all the mountains of Israel. Joshua destroyed them utterly with their cities. Do you all remember when the 12 spies went into the land? Moses sent them in there across the river, go check out the land, the promised land that we're going to occupy. Joshua was one of those spies, right? Mm-hmm. Joshua and Caleb were 2 of the 12 spies. Mm-hmm. And when they came back, do you remember how they were all afraid? 10 of them were afraid and said, oh, we can't go there. Joshua and Caleb were like, whatever, man. What were they afraid of? What had they seen? Giants. They saw giants. They saw the Anakim. That's who they saw, the Anakim. These guys are giants, man. They got grapes this big. They got this. There's no way we can fight them. That's what they said. And then bad things happened to them because of that. But Joshua was like, we got Yah on our side. What are we afraid of? I'm not afraid of those giants. These are the Anakim. These are the giants, the Nephilim, the offspring of the fallen angels and women. The first giants, Genesis 6, right? Noah's Ark and the flood, and then they all drowned. Well, there was a second eruption. And we can read in Genesis 6, there were giants in the land in that day, and also after that. And so the flood was to get rid of all those Nephilim, but there were some after that. So there was another influx of Nephilim coming down and laying with earth women and creating these beings, and a lot of them were there. Well, that's not a creation of Yah. And so Yah has no desire to keep that creation. What did Yeshua say about the end times in Noah? Does anybody remember?
As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of man.
At the coming of the Son of Man, of him. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. Yeshua is saying, before I come back again, it's going to be like it was in Noah. Now, we already know from reading about Noah, is the Father going to destroy the world by a flood again? He is not. No. That's why he put a rainbow there, so he could show us, hey, don't worry about it. The rainbow is not for LMNOP. It's to show us that he's not going to destroy the world by flood. But he said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. They were taken and given, that part goes in there, taken and given to wives and stuff. But what he was referring to was the situation that was going on. I submit, we're going to see giants. We're going to see giants, and they're going to be scary. We're going to be like Joshua and go, whoa, those things are big. Those super soldiers, man. The Chinese are breeding super soldiers. They're 13 feet tall, and they're body armor, and they're interfaced, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because if Yah be with us, who can be against us? They went in and destroyed all those Anakim that were there, almost all of them. There was none of the Anakims, 22, left in the land of the children of Israel. Only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod there remained. So there were some that were left over. Anybody hear about the giant of Kandahar? Hear about that? I don't know about that. I've looked into that. I know if I had research ability how to find out about that, because I know the soldier that was supposedly killed fighting this giant, and you could go back and research that way. But there's tales of giants out there in the world now, and I think there'll be more. So anyway, but there were some there that remained. 23. So Joshua took the whole land according to all that Yahweh said to Moshe, and Joshua gave it for an inheritance unto Israel according to their divisions by their tribes, and the land rested from war. Who's the leader of Israel at this point? Joshua. He's a war leader, right? I mean, he just led them in this huge battle for the promised land. He wins. He's the leader, so he wins. He's got all this land. Did he keep the land?
No.
No, he didn't keep the land. He gave it. He distributed it to the tribes. And he said, here you go, here you go, here you go, here you go. Because he was fighting for Yah, and Yah's chosen people are Israel. And so he was doing what Yah wanted him to do. That's the end of that chapter in Joshua. If Yah be with us, who can stand against us? It doesn't matter if they've got chariots, if they've got horses, or they've got Anakim giants. It doesn't matter. We have to be of good courage and not fear, because he's on our side. Let's pray.